Dapo Adeola is a renowned Nigerian-British children's book author, illustrator, and storyteller. Since his best-selling debut in 2019, he has created over a dozen children's books, which he has either illustrated, written, or curated. He has also received numerous awards, including the Waterstones Children's Book Prize in 2020 and Illustrator of the Year at the British Book Awards in 2022. We hope you enjoy this conversation with Dapo about his career and what it took to get to where he is today. Welcome to the Painted in Color podcast. I'm your co-host, Mia Araujo, and I'm joined today by co-host Lauren Brown. And we're very excited to introduce our very special guest, Dapo Adeola. He is a best-selling children's book illustrator and author based in the UK. He was named Illustrator of the Year in the British Book Awards in 2022, among many other honors. And we're super thrilled to have him today on the show. Dapo, welcome. Thank you so much for agreeing to chat with us today. How are you doing?
I'm fine. That was a brilliant intro. You did not stumble once. Well done, you. And I'm fine. Thank you for having me on the show.
Awesome. No, I'm so excited. I've been such a fan for a while. Go ahead, Lauren.
That means a lot. I think I've been following you for about 2 years or so now. I'm not quite sure, but I remember when I saw your work the first time. I think you followed me, and then I was like, oh, this person's amazing. Follow back. So yeah, I've been following you for close to about 2 years now. So yeah, the fan is mutual. The fandom or fanship or whatever it is, it's a mutual thing.
So cool.
I love when that happens. It's the best thing ever. So, Dapo, tell us more about yourself. We always start with the beginning of the journey and what got you into children's books in the first place. Let's just start there. The softball question.
Okay. It's kind of a softball question, but I always try and think about how to summarize my whole journey in a nutshell. So I will start with the earliest kind of time I remember really knowing that, oh my God, I want to do this thing, right? And this thing being drawing for a living. I didn't quite know it was called illustration at the time. I just knew it was drawing, making images. I was about 7, and my sort of first proper encounter with children's books was with Roald Dahl's books. And it was the first time that I ever got given the choice to choose what I wanted to read. So I come from a Nigerian household, and it's more important to be literate than to enjoy reading. I don't know if that makes any sense, but parents don't want to be embarrassed by their child being illiterate. So it was very important to know how to read, more important than enjoying reading. So up until 7, I got given all these books that would make it easy for me to understand certain words, like key stage this, key stage that. I hated those books. I absolutely hated them. I could read them, but it brought me no pleasure. So I got really good at hiding them, which was amusing to me. So you'd be trying to get inside our flat and you can't get in because the door's got this book wedged under the carpet. I got really good at hiding it. But then I moved into a new year group in school. I got given the choice of picking a book that I wanted to read on a bookshelf. And the first thing that jumped out at me was an illustrated Roald Dahl book by Quentin Blake, who has since become one of my favorite illustrators just of all time. And I love the book. I love the way that his artwork just came alive on the page. Prior to this, I also loved cartoons and I also loved video games. I was a huge fan of Mario and Sonic. And one of the first things that me and my bestie started to do at the time was we started to create our own Mario levels and our own Sonic levels on page. We would just draw them out and draw the characters out. Because, Mario's still got one of the best character design. Just they've stood the test of time. The Koopas, all those kind of Goombas, all those things, they stood the test of time. So we would draw our own little levels with pipes and the clouds and all that stuff. And that was our thing. And then, I moved on from there to comics when I went to secondary school. Secondary school is middle school. Is it middle school that you guys call it? Yeah, we call it secondary school. So moved on from there at 11 to secondary school, came into Marvel Comics properly in X-Men, because I knew who Spider-Man was, but that was when the X-Men cartoon popped off in secondary school back in the 90s, and I was like, what is this kind of thing? And with me, I get really obsessive over anything that I get into, so I loved it. So I went back and started reading the comics that predated my birth, the 60s era X-Men, all that stuff. I just wanted to consume all of it, and I'd be at the comic shop just spending my last little bit of lunch money picking up all the comics. And I really loved just comics and the artwork. And the 90s was an extreme time for comics. Everything was pouches and big muscles and massive hairdos, and it was crazy. It was an intense time for comics, and I loved it all. And, I went from the Mario drawings to create my own little comic book characters. And, we had all these little trading cards at the time. That was when trading cards were really cool. Like they were painted by the Joe and Andy Kubert. And this dude, he passed away the other day. I can't remember his last name anymore. But him and his brother, they used to paint all the Marvel characters. And I had tons of those cards and it was so much fun. And yeah, that got me into that. So then I'm sort of in secondary school. I'm coming up to like the last couple of years where we choose. Over here, we do GCSEs. I don't know what you guys sit over there. I'm not sure what the equivalent is in America, but we do something called a GCSE, which is what you sit at the last year of middle school before you go into high school. So we were getting ready for that. 2 years is our prep time for that. And you choose your subjects that you want to specialize in the first year. And in the second year, you then study them. And then in the second year, you sit a test based on those subjects. So obviously, I'm the kid that draws in class. Everyone's like, he's going to pick art. So I picked art, did the thing. I got a B in art. And that always surprised, that always surprised everybody. And do you know what I realized? My issue with education is I was not good at applying myself. Like I knew everything that there was to know, but I just didn't care. I didn't care. Like, so I would be the kid that's just chatting in class, just like we had this thing called RE, it's religious education. And it was about Christianity and religion and philosophy and all that stuff. And I loved that at the time because of all the lore that that was attached to it and all the interesting discussions that you can have about what's right. If this is right, then all that stuff. So I was that kid in class. The teacher would throw a question out and we'd spend the whole lesson talking about this thing because I was trying to understand it, and so much time would go by, we wouldn't get anything else done, and my teachers got sick of that eventually. I love history as well because of that, because I had a really good teacher for history, and they would tell these epic stories about World War One and World War Two, and it wasn't boring. It was interesting. I was fascinated because he had a theatrical way of telling the stories. But when it came to exams, something in me just switched off. And I know now what that is. At the age I'm at now, I've got hindsight. I know that the way that I learn is different to, what we've been told. Like, I think there's a one size fits all approach to teaching that teachers apparently have to take. I don't think they have to, but I understand there's only so many hours in the day. You can't get through everybody's, and you can't cater to every single person's needs. And I feel it's a shame because there are children like me that slip through the net. I was intelligent enough. I knew what I was doing, but I just wasn't engaged in the way that I needed to be engaged. So as a result, I coasted through. I managed to get the necessary grades to get me to the next stage of education. And I just didn't really care enough. I didn't really have a sense of what it was. And there was a lack of confidence as a child in me for me to be able to say that I want to grow up to be an artist. And that lack of confidence came from not being able to look out there and see people who are like me doing what I wanted to do. How many Black artists did we know? They don't teach Black artists in school. They don't teach that. Like, you don't get told that the Harlem Renaissance was a thing. You don't get told about any of that stuff. You get pointed at old white artists all the time, So I just never saw anyone that looked like me. So that thing wasn't clicking for me as a 16-year-old. So I finished. I got into college with my grades. I studied art and design at A-level, graphic design, and business. Business I had to take because I needed 3 courses to be able to get into college. I tanked business. I don't think I showed up to one lesson, or maybe one lesson I showed up to, and then I just bunked, and then I got dropped off that particular course. But I somehow made it through to the second year. I'm a terrible academic student. I'm terrible. It's just not my thing. Somehow made it to the second year in college. And by the way, we call high school college. Yeah, we call high school college.
Okay. Yes.
We call university what you call college. So yes. If it tracks, if people listening, that's how it works in the UK. So made it to the second year, and this is where I think my fortunate streak really started. So I was lucky to have really good teachers, and I think teachers can make or break your life. Like, I firmly, hands down, I believe that. A guy called Darren was my graphic design teacher, and again, I was the kid in graphics that would be talking all the time about interesting things with pop culture and just bringing all these cool arty things into the lesson. And my draftsman skills were on point. Like I could draw. It was evident I could draw. But coursework, I was awful. I was awful. I would turn in like, we got like, you have to turn in like a massive chunk of coursework. I'll turn in like 5 sheets and I'm like, yeah, there you go. And it's just not enough. It just wasn't enough to bump my grades up to where they needed to be. So I failed, like absolutely failed college. But Darren calls me up one day. He's like, show up to this room at this time in the college. So I thought I was in trouble. I thought I was, I've been bunking, playing basketball all this time. So I'm going to get in trouble. So I come in and I come into the room and there's like 3 white, like professional looking people sitting at the desk. My work is on the table. I'm like, they're going to tell me my work is terrible and I'm wasting my life. So I'm sitting down in front of them. I'm like 18 at the time. And they're like, your work is really good. Would you like a place on our course? So they were visiting lecturers from another establishment and they wanted to basically recruit students onto what's known as a foundation art course. And a foundation art course is basically like a course you do to access a higher education degree. And it basically gives you a taste of loads of different fields of art so that you can pick one to specialize in for the degree, should you pass, right? So I said, yeah, because I didn't have anywhere else to go. I'd failed, right? So I got onto the course and that was the best time I've had creatively, academically. That was just the best time because we got to do everything. We got to do fashion, we got to do printmaking, we got to do life drawing properly for the first time, graphics, fine art. They just a little bit of everything. For a month, we'd be studying different things, right? And I got a taste for it. And I chose graphics as a specialist subject. And, at the time, again, I'm like 18. I don't really know much about life. I'm just trying to think to myself, what can I say to a girl that I do that's not going to get me laughed at? If she asks me, what do you do for a living? I can't be like, I'm an artist, because everyone thinks artists are broke. So I thought if I say I'm a graphic designer, it might sound a bit spicier. So I did graphic design. This is how I made decisions when I was younger. So I did graphic design. I got into the course, and I think this was a pivotal moment for me. So amongst my friends, I'd garnered the reputation as the kid that likes to draw. Everyone knows Daps likes to draw. Any brief they set us, I will find a way to draw. Like any brief, like, because we did graphic design and advertising. The point is to sell people things, right? I would make every single brief into something that allows me to draw. I was making merch before merch was a thing, before making merch was a thing. Like I was just, every brief would be tailored to drawing. And I coasted through my first year, did really well. Second year, struggle, but I got there, I did well. Everyone's doing Adobe Photoshop, image manipulation was the thing, when Photoshop was hot. This is a long time ago, by the way. This is like 2004 or some shit. But like, Photoshop was the thing. Everybody had all these crisp Photoshop skills. And here I am with pen and ink on a light box, scanning stuff up, adding a little color here. And it worked. I was using traditional art. It worked. It got me through. Third year, I'm like, okay, we're almost at the finish line. And I'm doing okay. I started a dissertation in the third year, and it was about how you can teach. By the way, I had no intention of going into children's books, right? This is about 15 years before I got my first break in picture books. My dissertation was, how can you teach children different things using children's picture books? And for my end of year project, I was going to do a retelling of The Tortoise and the Hare as a counting book. In my book, The Tortoise Cheats, I'm still going to make that book. There are 10 tortoises, but that was my thing. I wrote out the story, wrote the dissertation out. It was a cracking dissertation. So we have tutorials for our dissertation. So the first tutorial, it was okay. Second one, it was good. Third tutorial, for some reason, it's as if the first 2 didn't happen, because that's when I get told that I'm not going to pass the course. And the reason I'm not going to pass the course, the whole course, by the way, the whole 3 years, by the way, I'm not going to pass. The reason I'm not going to pass is because my dissertation and my end of year project are not graphic design projects. They are illustration projects. Then I got asked a question that made me want to jump across the table and slap the teacher in the face. Obviously, I was heated and we're young. And the question was, had I ever considered studying an illustration degree? Now, your lecturers are supposed to guide you, aren't they? They're supposed to give you that kind of advice, especially if you spent 3 years drawing up until that point. No one ever suggested it, but somehow, with 3 months of the course to go, that's the question I get asked. I'm 21. I'm deflated. So I just said, you know what? I'm not going to show up anymore. And I just didn't show up. We had like 3 months to go. I just stopped coming in because I was deflated, and I didn't come from a household where I could turn to anyone and get advice. I just don't come. That's not my reality. You know, I'm on my own. I'm trying to figure this out. I don't even know that illustration is, I just didn't feel like I belonged. I didn't feel like illustration was something that was open to someone like me. I figured I would just keep drawing and the future would take care of itself, right? So I stopped coming in, and this is where that teacher thing happens again. So my first year lecturer, a guy called Craig and I are like really good friends now. He called me in because he saw my attendance slip. So he called me and he was like, hey, that's what's going on. We sat, we talked, and I told him what happened. And he apologized on behalf of the faculty for the way that they handled the situation, but it was too late. Nothing could be done at that point because we got like a month left and I can't finish all the work in time. And they offered me an extension, but I was completely deflated. I didn't want to go again because it kind of felt like they didn't want me to win. If I'm going to be honest, it just really felt like I was on my own. So I just didn't want to be in that environment anymore. So I just quit, didn't come in, didn't finish the course. But something that Craig said, which is corny, but corny's good. Corny's corny for a reason. He said, you know, Daps, you're really good at drawing. Don't stop drawing whatever happens. And I didn't. You know, I found myself working different jobs and I would keep drawing. And there was just this nagging feeling, like this thing, like I'm working a job. It's a good job. I'm working in a gym. I'm selling gym memberships. I'm having, you know, making some good money. It's okay. But I just kept drawing. And I was coming up to like 25. I was 25 at the time, actually. And something was like, you know what, you don't have any kids. You don't have any commitments that are like big commitments. If you're going to learn how to be an illustrator, you have to do it now or you're never going to do it. So I went part-time at the job I was at, took a huge pay cut and started working on reception. And the receptionist job, the reason I took it was because it was a job that didn't require me to put in too much head work. So I'd be drawing at the desk, doodling, you know, while I'm swiping people in and welcoming people to the gym. I stayed in the reception position for almost 8 years or so, probably about 8 years before things really took off. And the plan was I was working full time, and the plan was to replace my shift work with artwork a day at a time and trim it down. By the time I got, you know, I had a great year. I started putting together an education in illustration via online resources. And I learned so much in such a short space of time. You kind of learn more when you're outside of an environment, outside of an education environment and in the real world than you do when you're studying at school. Because now you have to apply things. So you learn quicker and you kind of eliminate what doesn't work a lot quicker, right? Because you have to make money as well. You have to eat. So there is that. So I started doing that. I did some things while I was at the gym because my gym was in a business community park. We had like Facebook's head office next door. Debenhams, a retailer. We had a bank head office. It was just in a business park. So all those people that worked at those places were our members at the gym. They'd come downstairs, use the gym, go back up to their office. So I did a show. I took over the cafe area after hours in the gym, and I set up a 3-person show with 2 of my other artist friends, gave out flyers to the members. They came. It was great, like an absolute hit. This was 2012. And then that was the first time that I was like, I might be onto something. So my manager at the time really, really liked it. And what they did was they gave me the entrance area to the gym to use as a miniature gallery. So I put up work because we've got a captive audience. These people come to the gym, they walk by the artwork every day. So from me doing that, that gallery became permanent. And my job was to create work and switch things out. For 2 years, the gallery was up. And I garnered the reputation of the art guy at the gym. You know, so people from those head offices would have pieces of my work hanging up in their in their offices, and I would come into the buildings that they were in, and I'd do pop-ups as well. So just turn things around, and that really fast-tracked the days, reducing to like 2 days a week now. You know, in about 3 or 4 years, I went to 2 days a week working at the gym. And then I had my first art show outside of the gym, my first solo show outside of the gym. It was 2015. At the time, a guy that I had met when I first started in 2010, Nathan, who became a friend of mine, he had approached me in 2010 to do some character design for a pitch. It didn't really go anywhere, but I loved the way he works and he liked the way I work. So we kept tabs on each other over the years. So he became like a really cool television actor. I don't know if you get this show over there. You probably get it on Netflix. It's called Benidorm. It's about like a bunch of expats that settle in Spain. It's like a drama. And Nathan got a role on that. He was on 2 seasons of that. He blew up. He's doing writing on TV shows, kids shows. He's doing it all. Like, I'm just watching and I'm proud of him. He approaches me. He's like, Daps, I've got an idea for a little girl character, picture book. I think you'd be good for drawing it. So he gave me like a really tight, really short brief. And I just went away and I started drawing this character. And she was based on my niece at the time. And my niece was about 5 at the time, and it was based on her. And again, I don't really know much about illustration. I knew that character design was what I love, coming up with like different characters, and especially like cartooning, that element. I just loved it so much. So I did the character design. His agency that he was with, the talent agency, they merged with the literary agency, right? And he took my work to the literary arm of his agency. I'm getting a phone call. They're like, come in. You like your work? I'm like, all right, cool. I'll try anything once. Came in. I'm talking to the lady who's now my agent, and she wants to represent me. And I'm like, okay, cool. Do I have to pay you anything? She's like, no. If you make money, I make money. I'm like, all right, cool. Boom, signed away. Then I tightened up the pitch, did some more artwork for the pitch. She took it to this international children's book fair called the Bologna Children's Book Fair in Italy. And everything went crazy. Everything went crazy. She pitched it. Now, I've come to learn. Back then, I thought, oh my God, this is normal, but it's not normal. We started off with, May 2017, the 8th of May 2017. I'm going to give you a little timeline. So I signed with her in 2016, 8th of May 2017. That's the first inkling that things were going to be interesting. She's got back from Bologna in that April. So she's organized a meeting for us to meet the publishers that have expressed interest, to meet some of them. Nathan is in from filming, so we've got some time, and we go around in one day and we meet 6 different publishers. I thought that we were still going to have to be pitching, because we neither of us have a history in this. It's my first time out here. Nathan's never written a picture book before. I've never illustrated one. I don't even know if I can. Right? So come to this thing, and I'm thinking we're going to be trying to convince these publishers to bet on us. No, they were trying to convince us to go with them. We met 6 publishers in one day. We finished the day with 3 offers from 3 major publishers. I can name them now because it's years ago. So we finished with multi-book offers from Bloomsbury, Hachette, and Puffin, 3 of the biggest publishers in the world, biggest commercial publishers in the world. And we finished that month with 14 offers, like from several massive publishers. We had to take one. So we took it. It was a back and forth between Bloomsbury and Puffin Books, and Puffin made us the best offer, and we went with them. And I don't regret that, because they are a super publisher to work with. But that left 13 other publishers who wanted work from me. And I say me because at the time we didn't have the full draft of the book, but we did have a crap ton of illustrations from me. And that was the thing that was pulling people in. So in my head, I'm like, one book deal does not a career make, right? Cool.
Yeah.
I signed a book deal, and I was still working at the gym, still thinking, how am I going to figure out how to segue this into a proper full career? I didn't have to do that for long. An article that I took part in came out on BuzzFeed during Black History Month of that same year in the UK. And the article was 32 Black British artists that you should be following. And I did a throwaway like questionnaire, filled out some questions. Someone contacted me and asked me if I wanted to do this. I didn't think about it. I did it in like May. October comes around, my phone's blowing up, the article's gone live. And off the back of that, another book offer came in from a US publisher for a guy called Lamar Giles. And Lamar's book is one of the best books I've ever worked on. He's a brilliant guy, and we're really, really good friends till this day. So I signed that book deal. I have 2 book deals now, 2 series, both for about 3 books. And I was like, okay, cool. We're getting somewhere. We're gaining some traction. Fast forward to February 2018. The 13 publishers from 2017 who didn't get anything suddenly started sending book offers and texts through the email. My inbox was insane in 2018. And we took a few offers, the ones that I really liked, and my career began. Basically, like it just, that's how it all started. And I've since come to find out some points about the story. Nathan and I came in at the perfect time. Perfect time. It was a time when the industry was craving diversity, when all sorts of discussions were being had about the lack of diversity in the industry, both on and off the page. So here come 2 Black men with a story about a Black girl in STEM. and they can draw and they can write. It was a no-brainer for the publishers. So that's why they threw all those offers at us. It wasn't, I mean, we were good. We were good. So I'm not going to sort of discount the fact that we were good, but they saw the boxes being ticked. And I say that we were good because I don't think they knew how good we were going to be. Like they just didn't know that. So, for example, in the first meeting I had with my agent, she normally in this industry, the author is the person that gets to have the spotlight and the platform, and people expect great things from the author. Illustrators tend to be pencils for hire. I'll be real honest; they tend to be that unless you can advocate for yourself, which I'm very, very, very good at. So I made it very clear from the beginning that I don't just want to be a pencil for hire or be an illustrator. I'm a storyteller. Like any medium, I'm going to tell a story. Like so, let's go. And my agent at the time, I think she kind of said, okay, I don't know if she believed it properly or not, but one thing I'm so grateful for in my agent and my publishers at Puffin is that all of them, in spite of the fact that they've been in the industry for like a decade each, they know the ropes. They were all willing to reset and learn alongside me. So they never made me feel like I was sucking eggs. They never told me how to draw. They learned alongside me. They learned a new way of working because I like to think I brought something different to the table because I am not the norm from what they've all been working with. But they gave me so much room to come as myself and not feel like I have to change because I'm not formally trained. I learned everything I learned about illustration by myself. So the way that I work, sometimes I take the long road to get somewhere, but I learn a lot on that long road, and it all informs everything that I do. And I bring a somewhat different perspective to the career, not just what I put on the page, but the way that I approach everything in the career. And I'm so grateful that I get to do that, So I think that's like a long-winded version of my journey. Well, not long-winded, actually, it's quite short. There's so much stuff I could say, but yeah, that's my journey. That's my journey in a nutshell. That's the journey.
That was perfect. That was so well told, and so gratifying to hear like your whole journey and how you got there. And yeah, just super inspiring. So thank you for sharing that.
You're clearly a storyteller because that was a great story.
Yeah.
Well, when I start, like, I'm like, oh my God, am I talking too much? Am I talking too much? But I'm like, you know what, just tell that bit, get it out of the way, and that's the journey.
Yeah, it's great too because it generates so many questions from me. I'm just like, I'm so curious at like so many different steps in your journey. But Mia, if you want to ask first.
Just a quick question. I know we touched on this like off camera, but I'm so curious what your parents, were supportive or not, because we ask our guests this a lot because we don't typically expect parents to be supportive of their kids being artists, but I'm just so curious what your journey was with that.
And if I can add to that, in the Black community, as a Black artist, I had my own experiences. I'm curious if your community around you was supportive, even if not your parents or if your parents. So I want to add that too.
So my parents is a no. It's a straight no. Like my mom didn't understand anything. I wasn't even raised by my mom. My guardian wasn't interested. I was left to my own devices, which was a blessing because when you're left to your own devices like that, there are no expectations. Mm-hmm. Like you're not expected to be great. No one cares. So you can do what you want. So anybody listening that finds themselves in that position, it's a blessing, believe me, because when people have no expectations of you, you can do what you want. You can try what you want. Do you know what I mean? So it took me a while to adjust and see it that way, but that is the way that I see it. There's no expectations. That means I can't disappoint you. Yeah. Let's go. Right? So that I didn't have that, but I didn't have my mom. I understand that there's multiple things at play, right? For especially if you're like a second generation immigrant, for example, there's multiple things at play. Our parents don't tend to understand creativity. Mm-hmm. They just don't. They think that that's the quick route to suffering, and on some levels they're not wrong, but just not the way that they think. They're not right the way they think they're right. So I didn't get any support there. The one person, the key person that really showed me love from a very young age that is consistent and has carried through and now gets to reap the fruits of the love that she poured into me is my nan. My nan is the greatest person in the world to me. And she always, always, always saw me and she was always proud of me because I just wanted to draw. Like I was a kid, I just wanted to draw. I love drawing. It brought me so much joy. It brought me so much escape. And she fed into that. Like she wanted to see my work. She was interested all the time. And even when I was older, like I didn't get into the career I wanted to get into until I was in my mid-30s. So that was when I had my first really big break, which was the signing of the book deal, right? Mm-hmm. And at the time, prior to that, I'd had a situation where my mom, because we're not, like I said, I wasn't raised by her, so we don't have that connection, but she knows about the connection I have with my nan. So she went to my nan and she was like, oh, I need you to talk to Dapo. I feel like he's wasting his life, blah, 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 all this stuff, right? And my nan's first thing to do was to call me aside and say, look, your mom's come to me with all these concerns. You're getting on, you're 30 something years old. But before I tell you what your mom's concerns are, I'm going to tell you that as long as you're happy, I want you to do whatever makes you happy, right? And then she told me my mom's concerns. And the thing is, it's like, without getting too deep, it's like, to me, that was one of the most important moments in my life, because this is a person who, they kind of raised my mom as well. So like, they should kind of essentially be telling me, oh, your mom's concerned about you. We're all worried about you. But she didn't do that. She did not do that. She was like, do whatever makes you happy. If this thing makes you happy, do whatever makes you happy. Because she knew I'm not hurting anybody. I'm not, if I'm not married, I don't think the world cares. I really don't think the world gives a shit. Do you know what I mean? If I don't have any kids, I don't think the world cares. Do you know what I mean? Like all I'm doing is drawing. I don't, I'm not asking anybody for money. I can pay my way in the world, but I'm just drawing. This doesn't harm anyone. And she also knows that I'm a creature of habit. Like I was committed to this thing. Like two places you can find me, three places really. One of them is the same place: work, which is at the gym, or training, which is at the gym, or home, which is at my desk drawing. So three places you can find me. I'm a clockwork person, and she knew that about me. And I think what happens with some of our parents sometimes is they're so blinded by their dream for us, or their fears for us. They're so blinded by that they don't actually see us. They genuinely don't see us. So now, as an uncle, I talk to my sister about this. My sisters have kids, and I'm like, know your children. If your children say they're interested in anything, you need to be interested in that thing. Learn a little bit about it so you can talk to them about it. We've got my niece, my oldest niece. She wants to be a pilot. Like, she told me that when she was 13. She's 18 now. And as soon as she told me, I got on my sister about it. We got her enrolled in cadets. She's now getting ready to attend flight school. And my sister has grown and changed along with her as well, and gone on that journey differently. She's not doing what our parents did, which is fear for us or bring any kind of, she learned a little bit about it. Now she's talking to me about planes. And I'm like, oh, okay, it's nice. Love that for you. But this is the difference in our generation and the approach that we're taking. So yeah, long answer that was, but the short answer is no. Didn't get encouraged by the parents, but my nan was there, and that was a blessing. And as far as the community, an interesting thing happened. I think I've always had the support of the community, as in like the Black community and my friends and stuff, from a young age, to be honest. But it's a tricky one, that one. Really, really tricky. I think a few things I've learned is, in school, it's brilliant. You're the kid that draws. Everybody wants to be your friend because you're the kid that draws. What you do is magic. It's impressive. Hey, draw me something. Boom, done. Impressive. Love it. As you get older, it changes, because our careers can take a while. You go to school, you study illustration, you're not guaranteed to get the big job straight away. There are so many things that you have to do to keep the lights on and the roof over your head. You have to take on another job and be working at this part-time. You have to be willing to do this grind, this really, really long grind, before you can start to see anything pay off. And it's not guaranteed, and it's also not linear, right? Some other career paths are linear. You go to school, you get the grades, you get the job, right? And most people tend to go into those things because they are quote unquote safer. I don't think that's true personally, but I get it, right? I understand it. So what started to happen is, as we got older, my friends saw me still plugging away at this thing, and it didn't seem to be breaking any ground. So the support became a bit sympathetic. It's cool. It's all right. I didn't take it in. I enjoyed what I was doing, and I loved what I was doing. And what slowly started to happen is I started to garner a reputation for being the art guy. I started doing commissions. I was quite creative with my approach to it. Things like setting up the gallery in the gym. And, you know, my whole thing was take art and put it in spaces where people don't normally have it. That was my whole thing. It still is my whole thing. It's my whole approach to my career, for example. Take stories that people normally wouldn't see in children's picture book and bring them in. Like, see how we can make it work, you know, take books that people wouldn't normally see in a space, put them in that space. Because why are they not in that space? So that's my whole approach. And it worked for me. And I started to garner that reputation slowly, but surely. Friends were buying pieces and putting them in their houses. Strangers became friends because of that. Like, people would follow me on Facebook, follow my work and buy my work. And I was like, oh my God, like, cheers, thanks, you know, and they would follow my career diligently. And when we got into the book space, nobody knew what was going to happen, man. We didn't know anything. We didn't know what was going to happen. But there are people who have followed me from like 2012 to now, and they've seen the journey. They've seen everything that's happened. And I think 2012 is the year that I can pinpoint as the year that everything just took this upwards swing, and it just went from strength to strength to strength to strength. So yeah, I've had that support, and it's been interesting observing how it shifts. Some people support in this weird kind of way, which, I mean, I get it. They have pity on you as the artist, the struggling artist friend. You're their struggling artist friend, right? They mean well. They're like, oh, you know, yeah, I'm going to support. I'm going to, like, you know, buy, oh, your greeting card. I'll buy that greeting card. They mean well, but there's this dose of sympathy that comes with it. Like, it's just like, okay, I'm not struggling. I actually like what I'm doing.
Yeah.
And then what happens is when you now succeed, that shifts a little bit. I've had that happen. It gets weird. It shifts a little bit. And there's this kind of, they other you. That happens a lot. Like, I'm like, you know me, I'm still me. Like, but you know, now I'm on TV. Now I'm doing this. Now I'm doing that. And my books are selling. My books are everywhere. It's like they kind of have to distance you from them. It's weird. It's so weird. I'm still sort of working that one out, but it's still weird because I think some of my people I would call friends that have known me for a while, the distance between me and them, and the theory that I have on it is that how I was before, it served them. It made them feel good about themselves, kind of pitying their artist friend who was struggling to, quote unquote, struggling to make it. Now the artist friend has made it. It's too close. Do you know what I mean? It's too. I know I don't serve them anymore in that way. You know. So it's been an interesting observation. It's only been about 6 years, but it's been a really interesting shift to observe with some of the people that I would have called friend at the time. But we move, man. We move.
Yes, we do. Definitely we do. Is it that kind of weird thing where they're like, oh, like he's too busy to hang out with us, or like he's like doing his thing over there?
They make the excuses for you. You didn't give me an opportunity to say I can't make it. You just assumed, oh, he's on TV, he's too busy for us. And I'm like, no one asked me. Like, I'm tuning into Instagram, I'm seeing them stories, y'all are hanging out. Like, whoa, what's going on? You know, and I'm fortunate to have friends who still show up, who still allow me, give me that space. Because if I say I'm busy once or twice, like, it shouldn't mean that you just determine that I'm perpetually busy for the rest of, and you're not. It was such a weird thing to observe happen. And I'm like, yo, what's this? Oh, you know, and some people let things slip. They're like, oh, you just don't have time for us. I'm like, you didn't ask me. You didn't give me the option to say no. Like, oh, you know, like, big time, you're big time. I'm like, what does that mean? Like, because an interesting observation that I've made is that this is work. And that's the part people don't understand. Like, we did a few TV, I've done a few TV appearances in the 6 years, right? And until you do TV, you don't know that, you know, as a audience member watching the show on television, I'm enamored. I'm like, oh my God, this is amazing. This is amazing. But when you get behind the camera and you see all the different takes, all that goes into that half an hour television thing that you watched, yeah, you have a different appreciation for it. It just becomes work. Like, we did a show that was airing for 30 minutes. It took us a day, a whole day, like 10 hours to film a 30-minute segment, right? Wow. You watch that, 30 minutes, it's done. You can go about your day and do other things. It took 10 hours to film that. And I had to travel somewhere else. So that's a whole day Do you know what I mean? So
Mhm.
having done that a few times, and the amount of takes as well. We did one recently. It took like 10 takes to do like a 30-second shot. By the 10th take, I wanted to swear so badly, but it's a children's program and they don't see that part of it, you know? So like when I'm getting that, oh, when it comes on TV and my friends are like, oh my God, that's so dope. And I'm just like, yeah, it was like, you know, they're like, what's wrong with him? Why is he not excited? Because I have flashbacks of the 10th take. Right?
Like, there's like no glamour for you on that.
It's the glamour has been stripped completely, like absolutely stripped. There was this popular show that we were on. It's called The Great British Menu. Like I didn't know how popular this show was. And I went onto the show and did the show. It was a fantastic experience. I was a judge on the show because the season was based around children's book illustrations. So I was a judge on the show. My book was like prime time on the TV every time the show was on, like big rocket signs, big everything. Like, and I didn't know how big this show was. So when I was asked to come on the show, I said yes. I was like, all right, cool. You know, I'll try anything once. And I came on it, filmed it. We filmed in November. It didn't air till like the following year around February. So I kind of forgot about it because there was other things going on. And when it aired and my social media started to blow up, I was like, what the hell is going on? I did not know that this was a national affair. Like everybody watches this show. And then we did the banquet episode in February of that year. And the banquet episode is the culmination of the whole season, the whole thing, right? And we had a great time. But the thing I remember the most about the banquet episode is we had to eat everything that was in front of us. We spent 8 hours eating. No. There was about 8 hours. There was about I'd say about 10 courses, maybe something like that. Like just so many dishes were coming out. And by the end of it, me and my girl at the time, we went back to our hotel rooms and we passed out. Like I've never eaten so much red meat. Like just so much. I was bloated, and that's the stuff that I remember, right? So when it comes on TV, it's all edited, it's all quaffed up, and everyone's like, "Oh my God, this is amazing!" And all I can think is the meat farts. I can just remember the meat farts. That's all I remember. So it's a really, really interesting experience, man. It's a weird experience to be on the other side and see. And now I kind of understand why some celebrities are just like, I'm over it.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I kind of understand that. Like,
yeah, from the outside looking in, everything looks like it's so much fun. It's like they have
so much fun, so glamorous.
The blood, sweat, and tears that go into everything that is curated for consumption is like so far removed from the actual process.
The actual thing that you're consuming, you know? Like, and if you knew, you might have a different approach to your consumption even, you know? Like, so, yeah.
But even when it comes to attention, because like when you're talking about your phone blowing up several times and stuff, I think that's a lot of artists are like, I can't wait for that viral moment where my stuff is in front of everyone. But until that happens to them, they don't realize how scary that is actually to have that many eyeballs on you at the same time. And you've had it multiple times and like on a way bigger level than kind of anyone I know. And I'm just curious what that's like, if you don't mind sharing.
It's a double-edged sword. So obviously we all want to be visible. We all want to be seen. We all want to be successful. The problem with it is I didn't know, for example, that I have social anxiety until I came into this job. I had coping mechanisms before for the life that I lived, right? Like, so, you know, I'm that friend that like will go to a party or bar and everyone's dancing. Everyone's like getting sweaty. I'm clean because I didn't dance. I bought my drink and I nursed it all night because I'm anxious. I'm standing there anxious. My anxiety functions in a different way because you think social anxiety, people think you're afraid to leave the house. That's not it. That's not it at all. So mine's is I get overwhelmed in really busy spaces, like a crowded high street. Like I start to feel, my heart starts to beat really fast and I get overwhelmed. It's not fear because I still can walk through, but I'm just hyper aware of everything around me. Like, and in a bar at night with the lights dimmed and just tons of people, that's overdrive. Like I'm overstimulated. Like, you know, it's too much. So I stand still, I freeze. I might find quite comfortable spot and just stay there all night. So that was my coping mechanism. And I just thought, well, you don't really like raving. The only times that I could really let loose and just get in and just not be overstimulated is when I'm intoxicated. So, you know, and I'm not one for drinking, so I don't want to be drunk every single time. Do you know what I mean? So I just found my coping mechanisms and went about my way. But then when we got into this job, part of the job is being in rooms all the time with loads of people that you don't know. And also when we make the books, we have to tour the book, and we do multiple events with hundreds of children at a time. And I would come home from each event and just wipe out, like being so, like sleeping on the bus on the way home, sleeping on the train on the way home, getting home and just not being able to do anything for the rest of the day from one or two events. And I knew something was up. So the first time I was properly able to identify it was in therapy. And that was the first time I went to therapy. And I was like, I was talking about the process, and the therapist was like, I think you have social anxiety. I was like, I can leave my house, something wrong with me. I felt so offended. But then explained that there's a spectrum. And once I got that, I started to look back at my behavior patterns, and I started to notice that I had been coping all this time. I had just been coping, So yeah, that was a thing discovered by being so visible all the time. And social media doesn't help it, because people feel like they know you. And I don't know how much you see on my Twitter, or I just constantly have to remind people, you do not know me. You don't know me. Do not do this parasocial thing. Mind your manners. You don't know me. Like, and don't be over familiar either, because I'm not comfortable with that. There's, it's one thing navigating as a popular, successful, visible person, right? It's another thing navigating that as a Black person as well. I've always been hyper conscious of my skin, always been, right? So now navigating this space as well it's interesting. It's super interesting for me, because I'm 6'3" and over 200 pounds. I'm a big person. I'm not small. So I'm very conscious of my Blackness in the world, and how much space I take up, and how aggressive I might come off to some people, or intimidating might come off. So I've had to be, again, hyper aware in that way. So, going from being relatively unseen to hyper visible and carrying that too, it's been an interesting experience. Like, I've since learned to let go of a lot of that. Take me as I am. If you're threatened by me and I haven't done anything to you, that's a you problem. But that's still something that's been a part of it. The physicality of me, the presence of me, how I am, and the expectations that people automatically have. And then trying to sort of knock that away and make them understand that, hey, those expectations are not my problem. Also, I work in children's books, which makes it worse, because we make books for children. There's an expectation of us to be somewhat infantilized in the way that we come off. And I'm like, I swear like a sailor, and I'm an adult. I'm 41 years old. Like, what do you want from me? Like, I swear on Twitter all the time. Your kids shouldn't be on Twitter. So they shouldn't be able to see me swearing. So, like, if you have a problem with that, that's a you problem, not me. So those things, I show up as an adult all the time. Like, I make a real conscious effort to show up as an adult. Some of my peers don't. They play into the infantilization, and it works for them. It makes them endearing to other people. I'm not here to be endearing. I'm here to do good work, So I just don't play into that. And I think that's a part of why I've been able to have the career that I have, because, again, I know how to advocate for myself and show up as a full adult. So yeah.
That's great that you don't edit down yourself for the sake of the industry, because I do see a lot of people doing that, and we talk on the show a lot about authenticity and your presentation and what you put out on the internet, because making yourself into somebody that you're not is only a cause for burnout and just losing your own identity and who you are just to cater to an audience. And so I really respect and appreciate that you don't feel the need to do that. You're like, your kids should not be seeing this, and I'm going to show up as myself. And
it's an exhausting performance. Otherwise, it's an exhausting performance, and then it takes away from your work, right?
Yes.
Like, the thing that I'm careful to do on social media is not to do too much, because people love to. It just takes away from your work. Like, I'm here to work. You came here because of my work. It shouldn't matter if I'm a nice person or not. Like, I don't have to be a nice person to deserve to make children's books, right? And there's an attitude in this industry where, because I'm not a horrible person, but I'm not nice. Like, I can be, my thing I say is, like, kindness over niceness. Niceness is performative to me. Kindness, what you do for people, says so much about you than what you say to them, So that's my thing. I pride myself on being kind. I try and be kind. I try to have a kind approach to how I live my life, you know. But niceness, it's just I could take it or leave it. I'm going to be honest. I'm not horrible. I'm not unnecessarily mean, but I might be having a bad day and I just don't feel like being nice today. So just leave me alone and I'll leave you alone, kind of thing. Do you know what I mean? So, you know, and when I have that, sometimes I might rant about something that's pissed me off online and people are like, oh my God, it's not what you said, it's how you said it. I'm like, I don't care. You don't have to look at this. You can go away, you know, and I find that what tends to happen in my particular industry is there's a certain demographic of people who have that because they look at you, they look at your success, they look at your skin complexion, whether or not they want to admit that's what they're looking at, and they think that you should be grateful for the success that you have and the space that you occupy. And I don't agree with that. Like, yo, I worked hard. My first book put me in therapy. So tell me something else, please. Like, I worked hard to be here. I'm not, my gratefulness stops at a certain point. Do you know what I mean? The space was earned. So, yeah.
Yeah. And that does lead me into a thought and question. I'm not sure exactly how to phrase it into a question, but it's something I've been thinking about a lot since 2020. Because during the time of the protests, a lot of Black artists got notice and recognition for sometimes maybe the first time, like in their careers, they've got this sense of elevation. And as a Black artist, as a Black author, like I want to know from you what you feel about that kind of trendiness around Blackness and like how it hits. And what do you do with those thoughts? Because it creates complex thoughts for me. And I also like to ask other people what they feel and think about that too, and how you process that.
I got angry. That's just my thing. And I'll say that because I knew it was going to go the way it went. I
Yeah.
knew it was going to go the way it went. Like the whole pandemic, like, you know, we changed a lot in the pandemic, right? Like the lockdown forced us all to be reflective and be kinder and, you know, think about the world and everything. But the thing about society is society always wants to snap back to how it was. And it's not so much people or whatever. It is kind of people. It's a bit complex, but I'm trying to keep it tight. So like, I think the capitalists have to make money.
Yeah.
How they were working before made money. Lockdown and what lockdown threatened to introduce in us as people wasn't going to make, it was going to affect their bag, right? So it was in their best interest to force us to have to snap back. Things like condemning work from home, even though we saw that it could be done, that it could be maintained, right? Things that like sharing power in the creative industry with diverse, you know, minorities, right? We saw that if done and maintained, it could work, right? All of that stuff, it just doesn't work for a certain group of people who are invested in maintaining the status quo pre-pandemic, right? So I just knew it was always going to snap back. You know, call me cynical, call me whatever. I just knew it was going to snap back. But what I did advocate for and tell people to do was to grab it while you can.
Yeah.
Grab it while you can and have a plan for when it snaps back. And unfortunately, I don't think a lot of us did that. I think a lot of us were so overwhelmed by the spotlight that got thrown on us when George Floyd died. And I think a lot of people spend a lot of time wanting to get into the industry. They spend more time wanting to get into the industry than planning what they're going to do when they get in. The reason why I was able to have the journey that I've had so far is because I had plan upon plan upon plan upon plan. My agent didn't have to tell me, Daps, you should try being an author. I knew I wanted to be an author the minute I walked into her office. You know, normally illustrator is what you get, and they try to put you in that box because it serves them. You drew a really cool Black character. Give us 20 more, you know? And I'm like, no, I want to do this now. I want to draw this way. I want to do this. I want to do this. So I'm very good at doing all that stuff. A book that I pitched in 2019 before I got published, it didn't get picked up. 2 ideas came about as a result of 2020 and George Floyd. The first one was a book I pitched in 2019, January 2019, I pitched this book. And it was an anthology about Black joy. We were going to get 20 Black artists and 20 Black authors and put them together to tell 20 stories about Black joy. And the idea was to introduce more Black talent onto the scene in one book, right? And to show the variety of diversity within the Black diaspora as well. And we did that. But the book got turned down so many times until 2020 when they needed a Black book. So then it got picked up. And the second book that got picked up was my author debut, a book called Hey You, which I'm supremely proud of. And Hey You manifested because I got angry during the George Floyd protests. And, I was like, I hate that we have to make books as Black people that explain our right to just exist.
Yes.
It's crazy to me. Like, we have to explain our Blackness to other people. And I hated that. So my editor at the time was like, hey, you got an idea? Why don't you write something different? I was like, I didn't tweet so I could write it. I was very reluctant. And then I thought to myself, okay, you know what? He's offering you this opportunity. Why not do something great with it? Now, at the time, the book I pitched in January, I hadn't received the word that it had been greenlit. So I proposed a different version of that book where I would do the writing. I'd write this thing, and we would get a multitude of other illustrators to help me bring it to life. So that's how Hey You was born. I wrote the book, and we had 18 Black illustrators from across the diaspora come together to bring the story to life. And it was basically a book of a long affirmation, about being Black, trying to speak life and love into people, just something positive for Black people, written for us, not about us to other people. It was for a Black audience. I wrote this book, and it was also accessible for other people too, but primarily it is for Black people that I wrote this book. The book did really, really well. It came out, did amazingly well. And it put together a squad of people, which I've kind of tried to offer advice to as the years have gone on. Some of them have taken the advice, and it's led to really good things for them. Some of them are about to make their own debuts next year, which is amazing. And it looks like they're going to have a career. But it took me a while to understand that, like, the percentages game, okay? So, like, out of 100 people, 10 people are going to make it.
Yeah.
That's how it goes. I wish it was bigger than that. I wish it was more than that. But for various different factors, 10 people are going to take what you give them and go through to the next stage. And then out of those 10, you got to shrink that again. Maybe 4 people might really go the distance. And out of those 4, maybe one person might really stand out, right? So it's a percentages game. And I had to accept that. And maybe it might change, maybe it might be different, but that's what I saw play out. Like, of the people that had a spotlight on them in 2020, I see that a small percentage of them have managed to segue into big things. But I also feel like this is not to sort of make them the exception. I also feel like the rule itself was rigged to begin with. So it kind of just makes it hard, because I think what we're witnessing now is a complete 180 from what we saw 4 years ago when everybody was throwing up black squares, right? All of these promises were made, and all of them have been just taken back. Now we're witnessing Black stories actively get snuffed and rubbed out. I think what we're seeing come out is the last few bits that were signed in 2020 and made. I feel like we're about to go into another drought season. And I have a theory on diversity in the creative industry, especially. And I think there's a 10-year cycle. And I think what we're in right now is the end of the last few bits that were signed to come out in 2018 to 2020, right? Mm-hmm. And then we're going to see a flipping drought for the next few years. People are going to be like, oh my God, diversity. And then in 2018, the cry is going to get 2028, the cry is going to get so loud that we're going to have that thing that we had again in 2018, where everyone's like, we need more diversity. We need more diversity. And then 2030, we're going to be flooded with it again. And then people are going to get sick again. And then it's going to go again. And I say this having just been in this industry for 6 years, and I've seen the cycle. I've spoken to people who've been in it for 30 years, and they've told me that this has happened at various different times. And I've earmarked it to a 10-year cycle. And, I might be wrong, but I don't think I'm going to be that wrong. It's a 10-year cycle. It's going to happen again. And what I keep telling people now is, if you have ideas, spend that time developing those ideas. Develop those ideas, have multiple ideas. So when this thing comes back around again, put it all out. And another thing that I noticed was, with these 2 books I made, the first one was Hey You, my picture book debut as an author. The second one was the anthology Joyful Joyful. What I wanted to do was encourage the artists who took part in these books to keep that door open the way that I managed to keep the door open for them. And unfortunately, that doesn't come as naturally to people as you would think. I think people are primed to get what's theirs to go in and just get what's theirs and to just work. And not as many people as I thought would think about the importance of not pulling up the ladder behind them or not closing the door behind them. My whole career is what it is because I made an effort to keep the door open for people. I'm so open to collaboration. I love collaboration. I love the unknown coming together and coming up with something that either of you didn't think was going to be a thing. That's the whole nature of what I do. But I'm finding that not everybody thinks about it in that way. And that, again, I had a really tough year last year. That was what I had to come to terms with, that not everybody thinks like you. Not everybody's going to do what, and it doesn't come naturally to everybody either. Do you know what I mean? It just doesn't. But I couldn't have done anything I've done in my whole career, even the journey that led to me getting signed. I couldn't have done it without the spirit of collaboration, you know? So, yeah, I think that was the long answer of saying, yeah, 2020 sucked, basically. Like, it was the long way of saying that. But yeah, that's how I see 2020 and the whole thing.
Yeah. I had always described 2020 as, or I basically those kinds of waves as they are there are huge waves of this recognition and this awareness, again, while we are trendy. But I do also, to add just a little bit of an optimistic bent to it, I do think that even though that wave dies down, it's like it's a big curve, but I think the baseline is at least a little bit higher from before when that wave hit. And I think
Right.
just it captures more people and makes them a little bit more aware that
Makes them a
this
bit more
is something.
visible. It
Yeah,
makes people more visible as well. Like,
it
so I
does.
would say I am part of that wave from 2018, 2020. So I'm here now. So another kid coming up can see me,
Yes.
right? So they can
Hmm.
see me, they can see you, they can see the people that have surfaced from that wave. And I think, again, it's such an important thing to have more to you or more to your journey than just I want to be an artist, I want to be an
Yes.
author. So I'm like, yo, I'm a storyteller. Any medium I can tell a story, and even if it's just me chatting and yapping away, I can tell a story. So for me, if you see the whole thing as opposed to that narrow thing that you want to do, I think it really will inform your longevity in the creative industry. Like, I make it a thing to learn everything, everything I can, everything I can squeeze into about making books, right? I talk to editors, I talk to designers. I have a network of people that I've built just from showing up and
Yeah.
asking questions, you know? And I think in times when things are quiet, right? I'm always gonna eat. Like, the other day, a thing I did, which again, illustration. We want Dapo to illustrate. So I decided I'm going to write for other illustrators. And I did that by myself. My agent was shocked by it. But when I turned in the picture book text, she was like, oh my God, these are really good. That's my thing, it's collaboration. I want to work with other illustrators. I want to see what they do with my words. It's not always I'm also writing and illustrating my own stuff. I'm illustrating for others, but now I'm writing for other illustrators. So that's three things I can do. I don't think I'm ever going to go hungry as long as picture books can be made, because that's three things I'm willing to do. And you'd be amazed at how many illustrators just want to illustrate and don't consider themselves as a storyteller in another medium, right? And I'm like, if you illustrate books, you can write a book.
Yeah.
If you can illustrate a book, you can write a book. The only person telling you can't is you. You
Yep.
can write a book,
Yeah.
So, and I'm like, and I encourage illustrators all the time, write stories. Like, and they've othered themselves from it. And I'm like, every day you illustrate, you're writing, you're just doing it in a different medium. That's what it is. You're telling a story. So there's no different. And also, if you can't for some reason, learn how to.
Yeah.
Just learn how to, because if you're talking about wanting a career, you need to have that multi-angled approach,
Totally.
especially in this day and age, man. You need to have that. Like, you need to. Only a few of us get so lucky that we can do one thing and only excel at one thing and have a fruitful career, you know?
Totally. Dapo, I'm so interested actually because it sounds like you enjoy collaborating as much as you enjoy writing and illustrating your own stories. What are
Maybe even more, if I'm going to be really honest. Like, maybe
yeah.
even more. Like, yeah, this is something exciting about like seeing what two minds can can bring up, discovering that thing. Like, I love this process that I have with some of the people I'm working with, where we'll like be on a phone call and the problem that we were trying to solve, we solve it in real time. Yo, that is
that's
addictive.
magic. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
It really is.
Sorry,
Yeah.
was there a question?
Yeah.
Oh yeah. No, I guess I just wanted to hear your like what you enjoy about collaborating versus making your own thing, because there's some artists that definitely enjoy making their own stuff more, and some that like collaborating. And it's interesting to me that you do both, well. So I was just curious.
I think to me, both inform the other, right?
Mhm.
Like, one informs the other. So like, making my own stuff informs how I look at things, right? Like, and that then informs what I bring to a collaboration, right? Like, and collaborating teaches me new things, which then informs what I bring to making my own thing. Do you know what I mean? Like, right now I'm collaborating with a few people who I just never thought, because I have this weird thing. I'm a fan. I'm a huge fan. Like, that's why like I'm so actively following people on socials, and like I keep folders and folders and folders of people's work for future collaborations, just to know who's good at doing what and all the rest of it. Like, I'm a huge fan. And one of the people I'm fortunate enough to be collaborating with at the moment is somebody who I'm a huge fan of their work. It's a gentleman called Danny Hines, and you should interview Danny. Danny's an incredible illustrator. So he is a character designer on he was the lead character designer on Steven Universe, and he was the lead character designer on Craig of the Creek as well. And he is incredible. I'll drop his Instagram into the chat. Give me a second. I'll pull it up and drop it into the chat. But Danny is a phenomenal artist. And my mentor at the time, who's now a really good friend of mine, a guy called Matthew Forsyth. Matthew does picture books. He was also lead character designer on Adventure Time. It's a funny story how I met Matt. He's probably going to kill me if he hears this, but in 2016, Matt approached me. I was just like on a liking spree, liking all of his work. You know how you do, like a stalker style, like just liking all of his stuff, right? And Matt just DM'd me. He went on my page and started liking stuff back, and I was like, oh my god, like he's liking my stuff. And then he sent me a DM. He's like, hey, look, if you ever want me to do a draw over of any of your work, I'd love to. And I was like, oh, yes. I was like, you know, it's gas. And I was just like, I reached out to him and I said, yes, I'd love to. And then I just never heard anything back from him. And this is like 2016. Then 2020 happened. And all the popular artists were reaching out to the Black artists. They wanted to follow more Black artists. All this stuff happened. And it was crazy because, you know, again, I love Danny to death. Oh, you've already put Danny's stuff up there. Cool. Oh, I can hear you. Oh, this was 6:02. Sorry, I didn't see these messages. I've seen them now. Matt, so this guy called Phil Rinder. Phil is, again, he was like the lead on Adventure Time's character design as well. Phil is incredible artist. He put up a thing on his Twitter. He was like, you know, if you want mentorship, I'm offering 3 spaces for 3 Black artists, blah, blah, blah. I posted my work. I didn't get anything. Phil said, your work's lovely. I didn't get anything. It was okay, whatever. Then Matt DMs me. He's like, hey, I saw that, you know, you posted your work. Would you want to be mentored by me? And I was like, dude, great offer. But 3 years ago, well, 4 years ago, you DM'd me and offered me a draw over, and then I reached out to you and I got nothing. And he was absolutely mortified, right? Absolutely mortified. And then he told me what happened, and I understand it because it happened to me. Like I said earlier, my first book put me in therapy. It was such a strenuous experience working on my first book because it was the first time that I had to face my own shortcomings as an artist properly, because up until that point I'd only ever drawn in my comfort zone, and my comfort zone meant drawing characters against a white background, not having to think about environments and all those kind of things. I never faced the things that I didn't like drawing, right? And this picture book made me have to face those things, and I was facing myself and my own inability, and I had to learn, and I had to do all this awakening, self-recognizing stuff, all that stuff. It was beautiful. And Matt went through the same thing or something similar in his first picture book, right? And that's why he kind of shut down and he disappeared. And I didn't understand that till I went through my own experience, you know. And when he told me, at the time it was 2020, so I'd had my thing in 2018, 2019. So when he told me, I was like, yeah, no, I get it. I absolutely get it. And I didn't take it as him making a false promise that he wasn't willing to back up. Shit, you know, pardon the expression, but shit happens, basically. So that happened. And then he started mentoring me. He improved my character design exponentially. Like, I'm so grateful for that period of time. And then we just became really good friends. And he introduced me to Danny to help me figure out some design for a particular character that I was working on for a picture book at the time. And Danny and I hit it off. And again, being the fanboy that I am, I just don't think when these people are looking at my work, they just be nice. When they say things, I'm just like, oh, he's just being nice, he's being polite. He doesn't mean it. He's been nice. But Danny's bought all my books for his kids and they love the books. And he's always sending me like little videos and snippets of them reading the books and just showing me all the love. And last year, he hit me up because animation sucks right now, apparently. So he hit me up and he was like, hey, Daps, I want to segue into children's books. How would I go about it? So we had a long chat about it. And then I started thinking, I want to write for other people. Danny wants to make children's books. So I hit him up. I was like, dude, do you want to, I can write for you. He was like, dude, I love it. And I was like, oh, like, because in my head, I was thinking he was going to be like, yeah, well, we'll see how it goes. But he was really excited. So we started collaborating on a story that I think is just so perfect for both of us. And the story is about a lot of things that we talk about as artists and struggling and making mistakes and errors and all that stuff. And since working in this industry, I see that children suffer from that at a young age. Children are really hypercritical about the way that the artwork looks. And we always assume that children are free with the drawing. And they are to some extent, but there are those kids who really want to be good. They really want to, they really want to draw what they're seeing, how they're seeing it. So when it doesn't come out like that, they break down, they cry, they have, and this book is for those kids and the other kids to kind of make them understand it's not about being good. It's just about enjoying and having fun and making happy accidents, So yeah, that's the collaboration with Danny, and it's a very fulfilling collaboration. He's incredible. Like some of the stuff that he's turned out, and the figuring out the characters has been amazing. Because again, this guy's a lead. He teaches character design at Cal Arts. He's a lead character designer. He's phenomenal. So I'm thinking, what do I have to offer you? But he's taking my lead, my instruction when we're talking. I'm directing him on the phone, and he's drawing in real time and. Like the character's coming to life. He's sending me stuff via iMessage as I'm talking to him, and it's just coming to life, like really coming to life, like And it's been such a wonderful experience. And what it does is, for me, it's very affirming because it tells me that my judgment is sound. This is somebody whose work I admire, willing to take my notes and my lead on their work, which is it's insane. Like, so I'm just like, oh, thanks, and. Yeah, and that's what I get from doing this. Like when we made Hey You, when we made Joyful Joyful, a few of the artists, I was art directing them on their spreads and their pieces. And again, it's just knowing that even though I didn't formally train as an illustrator, I've educated myself in such a way that I have the vision that I have. I can see things, and I always think about all my work as a project, not just a piece. Like, because if you're thinking about the wider and the insular or whatever it is, like the micro and the macro, that's it. Yeah, if you're thinking about those two things at the same time and you're hopping back and forth and seeing how both feed into each other, that's a better way than just being hyper focused on the micro or thinking too much about the macro. Do you know what I mean? So yeah,
absolutely.
I feel like I rambled.
No,
okay.
I can't wait to see the book, by the way. When is it out?
Oh, it's gonna be good. I'm so like geeked. When we come off, I'll show you some. When we stop recording, I'll show you some work from it. Like it's gonna be so cool.
Oh my God, I'm so excited. That's incredible. A question I did want to ask you, Dapo, is like I saw that you had also worked in animation, and I was really, really curious about what the difference in thought process is with working in animation versus working in children's books, because I run into a lot of students who are doing character design and illustration and not really thinking about the practical application of what they're creating is going towards. And so for somebody who is such a professional and so amazing at so many different things, I'm really curious as to like what that transition was like for you.
So first of all, thank you for the praise. I'm going to knock it back though, because how this thing happened is so crazy. Again, so the story's nuts, right? So like, I think the first thing I can remember was I drew these 4 little girls dressed up as a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. And that got so much hype. online. Whenever I post it, it does numbers. And a lady that works at Disney, Kim, her name's Kim. I can't remember Kim's last name, but Kim, she saw it. She reached out to me. She was like, "Hey, what's your idea for these girls?" I work she's an executive producer for Disney Junior, I think it is. Mm-hmm. So she follows me on Insta, and I was like, "Oh, so she reached out. She's like, "Hey, I'd like to have a conversation about these characters, and also about Rocket as well, like because they were looking for new, diverse kind of content." So we spoke about that, and Rocket at the time had already been picked up. It was optioned already, so like, we couldn't do anything there. And those girls, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles is Nickelodeon property, so there's nothing I can do with Disney for those girls. But she was like, maybe you can come up with something else around cosplaying little girls. And I'm like, yeah, I'm not really interested. But I was like, maybe I can work on something with y'all. Like maybe you've got something that needs development. So she went away and, thought about it. But in between, again, what had happened, I think just before 2020, I got hit up. It was in 2020, but before the whole, the protests and everything, I got hit up by another department in Disney, because I think what had happened is Kim had shown my work around, and I got hit up by another department, and they offered me a character design tryout spot on what would then become Moon Girl and Devil Dinosaur. Oh. And I was so busy at the time, I said no. I can't do it, because I was trying, like I said, therapy the year before. I just didn't want to be burnt out again. Yeah. So I was like, no, I can't do this. And also, that would have been my first professional, proper character design gig. And one thing that I've done a lot of is learning on the job. So I was trying to avoid situations that keep putting me in a space where I feel less confident about my abilities and I'm learning on the job. So I said no. And I don't regret it. Great, the show is fantastic, and I've since I follow a few of the designers, and they did a spectacular job, and I learned a lot from watching what they did. Then Kim came back and she was like, "We have this project, we think you'd be great for it. You don't get to say no to Disney twice." So I said yes the second time. I was overwhelmed. I was busy as hell. I said yes the second time. Now, a lady called Latoya Review, she's Revenue, I think her name is. Latoya is a phenomenal talent. She's currently the showrunner on The Proud Family. She's been since the beginning. So the project that I worked on was called Speak Up, Stand Up, Sing Out, or Speak Up, Sing. Oh, Jesus, this is terrible. I should know this.
Rise Up,
on
Sing
Disney
Out.
Channel. Rise Up, Sing. Look at you. Rise Up, Sing Out. It's called Rise Up, Sing, because I was like, stand up, sing up, rise up, sing out, right? And they approached me to design the children on that show. So basically, it's a series of, I think, 6 shorts, musical shorts. Yeah. At the time, I didn't know who was making the music, so they were just like, "Hey, we got this show. We want you to work on this show and come up with the characters." I was like, "Yeah, cool." So it was such an amazing experience, and I've since learned that it doesn't always go like that, right? I was so lucky. It was a team of women that I was working with, and they were all phenomenal, and they all gave me so much room to bring myself to this project, right? Like to design the characters how I wanted to design the characters. The briefs were tight, but they were also quite open for me to bring myself to it. And I did just that. And I had a phenomenal experience. And I could only do development work. I couldn't do, because of my schedule, I couldn't do any in production work. I could only do the development stuff. But what I've come to learn about development, at the time, I didn't know anything about it. It's my first time. But what I've come to learn is that your job in development is to develop the style that might be used. They've got other people doing development in different styles as well, and they just want to pick which one. And I was so lucky. I think of the 7 characters that I designed, 5 of them were picked. My style was basically the style that they use for the kids, and then they tweaked and adjusted bits and pieces here and there, but my style was definitely there. So when you put my development drawings up against the final, you see the influence, right? So I was very, very lucky in that respect, because I know that other people don't get to see their work see the light of day in that way. And the band that Latoya was, because this is Latoya's baby, this was her project, and the band was The Roots, and I am a huge Roots fan. So when that came out, I was like, oh, I just lost my mind. And then I had another gig with Warner Brothers, where I was testing for, they were doing like a Steve Urkel Christmas special. And I think that's since come out, but they went in a completely different direction to the direction that I did my development work in. But it was also an honor to have that come through. I've had Nickelodeon on the phone asking me about stuff as well. My character design and animation jobs, if you will, they came about because of my work in illustration. Like I wasn't trying to find the job. And that's why I kind of had to knock back your lovely compliments, because I felt like at one point I felt like I didn't deserve it because I wasn't looking for it, right? But it came because of the work that I do. So
Yes.
I earned it, if that
Yes.
makes any sense. I earned it, like, you know, and I knocked it out of the ballpark for the one show that actually did end up using the work that I made. And to be fair, out of 3 tests, if you will, that I've done, to have one of them do that and the work to be so good, like, you know, I'm honored, man. I did a good job, so I'm cool. Like that's my experience in animation to this point. I'm still very open to working in animation, and I know that because of the way that I work and the work that I do and the reach of my work, if you will, I know that the opportunities will come again. But primarily, I'm a children's book illustrator first and foremost. That's the thing. And I tell people all the time, because I've had people that are like, I want to be in animation, I want to work in. I'm like, yo, the parallels are crazy. If you want to work in animation, make a children's book, man. Don't turn your nose up at that. Like animation will come knocking, but the joy of working on children's books, I think the reason why I was able to, especially on the Rise Up Sing Out, the reason why I was able to come in at that level that I came in at and not have to do cleanup or work from a low level. The reason I came in straight there and was because of the work that I put out in my children's books. They saw the children's books and like, this guy knows how to design Black kids. Let's get him. So if I wasn't making kids books, I'd probably be testing, just sending out endless things into the void, trying to find an animation gig. I'm like, while you're waiting for the animation gig, while you're waiting for Disney to come knocking, make a few kids books. You never know where that's going to go. The Warner Brothers project came from my friend Lamar's book doing the rounds because it was going out for submission. He was trying to get it optioned, and Warner Brothers, that book came across their desk. So they were like, hey, we like this book. We like this guy. Let's see if we can get hold of him. Because I always asked at the time, whenever they would get in touch, I'm like, oh, so how did you see my work? Some people are like, oh, we saw it on Instagram. Others are like, yeah, we saw this book, so yeah. I don't know if that answers your question.
It really did. It was fantastic. That's such an awesome experience. And I'm really glad that you acknowledge the hard work that you put into it, because I think, a lot of art, it's a very common trend in a lot of artists when we're working in something that we're not as familiar with and we're like, how do we get here? Like, what? I don't deserve to be here. But the fact that you can acknowledge the fact that like everything that you've done up to that point is what got you there. Like that is the reason that I reached out to you and used your style for that show, which looks adorable, by the way. Like I love how the characters come out.
Yeah, seeing how they came out, seeing how they move, seeing all those things, it is definitely a highlight. I mean, I'm still, I still have yet to get my first screen credit. That's the thing. I'm like, I want a screen credit so badly. So that's my thing. That's my next thing, because I was expecting one for this, but it didn't come because they only had, because it was a short thing. So the only people that got credited were Kim, The Roots, and LaToya, because but I also know that I didn't feel salty about it because I know the other people that worked on the show that are animators and illustrators whose work I love and follow, they didn't get credited. So why would I feel salty if, but I just know that I did the work. Like I had the work to show, do you know what I mean? So, and it was a great experience, and I would love to work for LaToya again. It's like, she's a phenomenal person to work with. So and she would be good to have on this show. Holy crap. Let me get LaToya on.
I love these recommendations. Let's keep it going.
LaToya is phenomenal, man. She's so cool. Like she does everything. Writes music, illustrates, show runs, writes like shows. She's amazing. But yeah, she would be great to have on the show. I'll drop her in the chat.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
She's still on here.
I have one last question that Eric kind of had a segue question into it as well. You mentioned you went to therapy and that, you do therapy and stuff like that, and that you burnt out. So I was just curious for our audience, we always ask our guests the mental health component to your career, like how do you deal with the hard times? How do you, Eric was asking what kind of self-care you do, if any, when you're not making art, or are you really bad at that? Because a lot of us are really bad at all of that.
So I'll answer that from the latter to the former. Like, I'm terrible at it. I'm not good at it. Work-life balance, it's not what it could be. And also it kind of forced me to look at balance differently. I think work-life balance in itself, people think balance is this,
Yeah.
right? Balance isn't this,
Mhm.
right? Balance is knowing when it does this to bring it down so it can do this, when it does this to bring it down so it can do this, when it does this to bring it up so it can, you're constantly doing this. It's a balancing act, if anything. This is just mid. Like, this is level, right?
Yeah.
Like, yeah, level's good, it has its purposes, but you're gonna find, because life throws things at you, you're gonna be doing this quite a lot. So balance is a constant thing. Like, people, trying to achieve level can drive you as crazy as being in balance, because you always feel like you're doing something wrong. So that's the first thing I got rid of. I don't feel like I'm doing anything wrong. It's being burnt out is a part of life, let alone the industry that we're in. And I also feel like I had to change my approach to what people call burnout, because people are like, oh my God, don't do that because you'll get burned out. Oh my God, you don't want to get burned out. Unfortunately, I think that learning to recognize when you're burnt out is far easier than avoiding burnout.
Yes.
I think so. I think you can definitely avoid burnout, definitely. But the chances are you're always going to be tiptoeing around things, and you're never going to give something 100%. Because unfortunately, to go from a point you are to a point you've never been before, the chances of you burning out are there, right? Mm-hmm. And I think knowing how to recover from burnout, and knowing that you need to recover from burnout, and recognizing when you are burning out, that stuff is important, and that's what I'm getting better at doing. I'm getting better at saying no. I'm really good at saying no. What I need to work on is creating more work for myself. So I told you a few minutes ago that I made 5 picture book texts for people to illustrate for me. I did this knowing that I already have 5 contracts to honor.
Oh my God.
So yeah, it was procrastination of the highest order. But I convinced my agent and myself that it was productive procrastination, which it is, right? Yeah. It is. But I'm really good at creating work for myself and others, right? And I had to kind of learn that I have a career, so I don't need to do everything today. I can put some of these away and store them for another day. So that's what I had to learn how to do, how to slow down, in essence, right? Mm-hmm. And then also I work out, I go to the gym quite regularly. Having a good, healthy exercise regime is not only good for your mind, it's actually good for your body. We do a lot of sitting down, a lot of sitting down. So mobility is the first thing that gets compromised. Mm-hmm. As an artist, you need to have a healthy spine, healthy back, healthy hips, all those things, and, healthy knees as well. So getting into that, little yoga, little Pilates, mobility training, that stuff is great as well. Swimming is spectacular as well. Like, that is just, that resets my nervous system completely. And I sleep very well after that. Therapy is great as well, because, if you're creating at a certain level, your work does force you to get quite introspective. You start thinking about what stories you're trying to tell, how you're trying to tell them. Sometimes you deal with heavy things, and also just in general, like, even if you're not doing this, even if you're doing something else, therapy is good, man. It's just healthy. It's good to kind of give your mind an MOT and just check yourself out and make sure everything is functioning, as it should function. If it's accessible to you, I encourage you to go and get some therapy. I guess in terms of tips as well, like, do not form an identity around what you do. Don't do that. Like, so many people do this. Like, drawing is a huge part of my life. Storytelling is a massive part of my life. There is a semblance of it that is who I am, right? In that I will do it regardless of whether I'm drawing or not, right? But it's not the sum total of who I am.
Yeah.
Like, there's a lot more to me, right? There's a lot more to me. Like, don't fix your identity on what you do. Don't fix your identity on any one thing, because, like, if that thing gets taken away from you, what's going to happen to you? Yeah. You're going to fall apart. Are you going to unravel completely? And also, I say that because I've come to learn that drawing isn't actually my skill. Like, my skill is planning. Like, I'm very good at planning. I love planning. If you listen back to this interview, you'll see where I've kind of talked about how I strategize and plan so
Yeah.
many things. And it took me a while to see it that way. Drawing is what I love to do. I love drawing. I love telling stories, but planning gets me so excited. The way that I look at collaboration is with planning in mind. Like I know which artist is good for this. I basically reached out to the artist that I wanted to write for, and I asked them, what do you like to draw? You know, because I wanted to know, like when I'm writing the story, I want to know what you like to draw. So like, I guess I say that not to go off on a crazy tangent, but to kind of explain that I had to look at this differently. Like I had to be more aware of what my actual skill is, you know, what my actual thing is. And that is all part of the mental health aspect of it for me, looking at things from this broader perspective, broader picture. Because if I understood that I wasn't just what comes out of my pencil, and I wasn't just, you know, what comes out of my fingers when I type, I can apply the way that I think to anything, to absolutely anything, and still find value in the outcome. You know, I don't know. I think you just have to be broader. You have to see yourself in a broader way, in a bigger way, like in how you fit into the world, how you fit into things, and not be so tiny with it. Not put yourself in this box.
Yeah.
That I'm an artist, and if I'm not drawing, I am nobody. And don't get weird about it. Like, just that's weird to me. That's like art is your whole personality, and being an artist. And you'd be amazed at how many people that want to get into this industry. That's what's motivating them.
Yeah.
Because they want that title. They want to be an artist. They want to be published as an author. They want to work in animation as a character designer. You have made the position that you want to be in mean everything. So that stifles you and stops you from seeing other possibilities. We've talked about so many of the things that I've done, the experiences I've had, and I wouldn't have had any of those experiences if when I sat down in front of my agent to be, I said, I'm happy to just be an illustrator.
Mm-hmm.
Like I wouldn't have done the things I've done if I was just happy and content to just be an illustrator. Like I had a very broad, and I still do have a very broad view of how I see this journey that I'm on, you know?
Totally. It's not just a status, like it's like a way of life for you, you know? So that's brilliant.
The status can be taken away. It doesn't.
Anytime.
It's the equivalent of like Instagram likes and followers and all that stuff. It's when you really. I mean, it's not useless. Like it's not useless, right? But it's ephemeral. Like it can be taken away. Something you can't really gauge sometimes if it means anything. There are some people who are doing incredible projects, and they have like a few hundred or a couple hundred followers on their social media. They don't even post their work on social media, but they're still doing amazing things. You know, you'd never know, right? But there are people that have hundreds of thousands of followers, and we'll never know about their work.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we'll never see their work. Their work will never see the light of day. You know, so like Danny, for example, I'm telling you about Danny. Danny has worked on so many incredible things. He's had more of his work make it onto our screens than people that have hundreds of thousands of followers.
Yeah.
But he doesn't have that many. He's not that big. He's not that well known, you know. But he if he pulls out his resume, you're gonna know who he is. Like the characters that you love, he did that, you know. So just marrying yourself to one idea of the journey, it's not good.
Yeah.
Like you need to be open. You need to have that balance thing. You need to be open and you need to be intentional at the same time. Like just, and that's another thing as well. So many things have come my way that I just could never expect. Like the Disney opportunity, the show that I was on. So many things keep coming. Like I've not had a chance to settle since I started this journey. Like I don't know what's next. I don't know what's next. I know what work I have to do, but I don't know what that work is going to bring through the door when it goes out into the world. It's always something unexpected, you know?
Amazing.
Yeah, that's exciting. Yeah. I'm excited for whatever comes next for you, Dapo, because clearly it's going to be amazing. And
I hope so.
You're gonna
it's definitely going to be interesting. It's never boring around here.
No
like, it's never boring around here.
That's the fun thing about
boring.
It's always something, but it ain't boring. That's for sure. Dapo, before we go, last thing, what are you working on right now, or that's up and coming? I know that we're starting to talk about it, that you're excited about. Anything that you want to plug?
Flipping heck. I can't plug anything because in our industry, everything is hush hush. Like there's a few things that haven't been announced, right? So what I can say is like obviously I might give you guys a look at it afterwards. But what I can say is my author illustrator debut, which is in 2026, has been greenlit. So up until this point, I've only ever written for somebody else or illustrated for other people. Now I'm illustrating and writing for myself, and that debuts in 2028. And then in 2027, up until this point, I've only ever done picture books as a writer and illustrator. I've illustrated some young fiction, which is a slightly older age, from like 7 to 9, I think. But now I'm writing young fiction and illustrating in a series of my own. And it's about a little girl and her dragon. That was announced last year. And I'm in the process of writing the story, and it's going to be fully illustrated. Think like Dungeons and Dragons meets African mythology kind of thing. So that's what I'm going for. It should be fun. I'll show you some of the work afterwards, but it should be fun. So that's 2027. And I'm also, I got a great deal the other day, which I can't talk about yet, with a phenomenal, massively talented author. But she's only up until this point written for adults. She's had TV shows made of her work, which again, I'll tell you about afterwards, after we finish recording. But she's making her author debut, and I'm the illustrator, and I'm so proud to be the illustrator on this, and it's a beautiful book, and I'm really looking forward to how that comes out. Yeah, just rocking on, honestly, like, and just open to whatever comes next out of all of that work that's going to go out into the world over the next couple of years,
That's awesome. We cannot wait to see it. Dapo, thank you so much for being on the show with us and spending this time. This has been incredible. And you've been such a well of knowledge and insights. And I'm just very, very impressed and inspired right now.
Oh, no,
so thank
you
you
guys
so
ask
much.
good questions. You guys ask good questions, and I talk a lot. Like, so yeah, I talk a lot.
It was
Talk
so
a lot of knowledge.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much. For everybody listening, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for participating in live chat. If you liked what you listened to, please feel free to leave a comment, like, and subscribe. Thank you so much for your support. If you want to join the discussion, please join our group at the Painted in Color Podcast discussion group on Facebook. And we really appreciate you listening and all of your support. I hope you enjoyed this. Thank you so much, Dapo, for being here. And we hope to see you next time. Bye,
Thank you
everybody.
for having me. Bye.